Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
So Brian Gartland is one of the most successful figures in League of Ireland history. He is a 5-time League of Ireland winner, 3 FAI Cups, 3 League Cups, a couple of appearances in the Europa League group stage with Dundalk all over the past decade, and made his debut 16 years ago now in the League of Ireland. And his autobiography, One Last Shot, is out now. It's co-written with Mark McCadden, and I'm delighted that Brian is in studio with us. How are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks.
A lot of startling revelations of a decade and a half in the League of Ireland. The most startling of all, that Stephen Kenny's favourite song at a sing-song is Something Inside So Strong. Is that something you can send a legal letter
maybe
about?
It's one he's best at singing.
Is it, yeah?
But, not was expecting it to lead with, so call me on the hop there.
What else did Stephen, what was it that brought Stephen Kenny out for a sing-song? Was it a league title only, or was this a regular occurrence?
Yeah, success, winning has him happy. Same with us all, we're competitive, so we were always, I suppose, so disciplined, and there was always this drive there and that. But when you accomplish something, there was great celebrations. Everything was celebrated, all the good times. So
if you pull your seat in a little bit closer there. So you had time at Bray, Shells, Monaghan, Portadown before finding yourself at Dundalk summer 2013. It covers everything about the hashtag greatest league in the world in the League of Ireland, in this, from the madness of the early days of Bray and Shelburne, and even into the madness of the last couple of years at Dundalk as well at times. When you think back to starting out in football, have you achieved everything you thought you would? Was staying in Ireland and becoming one of the most successful players in the League of Ireland, would that have been something that would have satisfied you when you were 15, 16? No.
The goal was way higher. The goal was Premier League, and Liverpool were my team. So, and that's in the book there, that it was just, that was always the pinnacle and where I wanted to go. And even when I was at Bray, it was right, get into the first team at 19 and try to get into the Irish 21s and get a move and so on. And I suppose that has to be a drive as a young player. You always want to aim for the top. I wouldn't have been thinking then, right, it's, win the League of Ireland here, stay here and have a great career here. It was always to go away. But been fortunate that I've had the life here, in the league here, and it's paved a career for me. It wouldn't have been what I envisaged, and I never thought even that sort of career was there in the making, staying in the country here.
Yeah. But I get the sense throughout the book that there's a bit of a frustration that you're almost typecast throughout your career as the big lad at the back, and though maybe at times people didn't think you were quick enough or that you were comfortable enough on the ball, whereas you felt actually there was a whole lot more to your game than people that might just see you the odd time.
Yeah, but I suppose I have to be, aware of what other people think as well. How someone else perceives you and how you perceive yourself can be different. So it's good to, I suppose, not be blind to that, because other people might be correct and I could be wrong at times.
Yeah.
But it's nice having people to prove wrong. I suppose that's what comes out in the book, is that they might be right, but I mightn't agree with it. So in my head, I've made a battle with them, and I want to prove them wrong. And there is that sort of mindset of, I talk about how not playing, I suppose, competitive or serious football, I was so much looser and so much more creative and freedom playing in 11-a-side local leagues in Dublin and different things like that, and I'd play centre mid or up front, and the shackles would be off in my mind as such. And sometimes when I went into competitive football, I just wasn't able to to get rid of them as much and express myself until later on in my career, and I was able to a bit more.
Yeah. When you think back to starting out at Bray, it was a rocky enough start. I think there was a disciplinary issue right at the very start.
Yeah. It was a disaster for me at that age, especially when I told you my goals, at that age.
So what happened?
There was I think I was captain of the 21s, and we were holders of the under-21 cup at the end of McGill Cup, and we were down in Eden Derry playing a game, and I think there was one ball and it's been booted, a field over. We'd have to wait for it back and all the tricks coming out, and there was only a couple of minutes added on or played, and there was meant to be longer added on, and first up to the ref, went away, had me a few words, probably over the top in terms of words, but that was it. Went away, but after, I suppose it was put down with the FEI as assault for putting your hands on him. And listen, I state like I never did, and I know number 14 at the time said he did, and I was wearing number 4, so the linesman had said he'd seen number 4, but so that ended up with a 4-month ban just when I was sort of getting into the first team in Bray and getting involved with the first team and on the bench and so on. So as a young lad it was disastrous, but
and not just for you, it comes across in the book as well for the family. Like, this is a huge setback. Everybody in the family is aware of, you know, your dreams to become a professional footballer, and to see your name dragged through something like that is pretty difficult.
My mother wasn't best pleased at all with, you know, I suppose the language when it's put in the disciplinary thing as assault, and she was like, this is serious and so on, and so I don't think she was even thinking about football. She was just thinking about, you know, that being put to her precious son that can do no wrong at the time. So listen, but it's just unfortunate. The biggest thing for me at the time was how you had no say. I went to an appeals process, and it was just there was no point in me being there because they were going with the referee's report, and that was it. Yeah.
You talked there about the discipline of that Dundalk side, and there wasn't a huge amount of times where you let your hair down. When you look back in those sort of first 6-7 years of your career and you're going through different clubs, how disciplined were you? How big a change was it when you got to Dundalk from what had gone on previously?
For me, I don't think it was a massive change. Even when I always trained full time, funny or not, I tried to, if I was doing a bit of coaching and everything, I tried to construct everything around football. Even when I was on the expenses, say I'm on 130 or 50 quid a week, you know, cover your costs and stuff like that. Football was first, so I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to the gym, get me gym session, maybe do a couple hours coaching, and then go training. And so I was training full time the whole time. I was a young lad, and I'd go out the whole time, but I wouldn't drink. I'd always be driving, and everything was geared towards it. Maybe I was a bit deluded because this was even in my early 20s when most people would be saying, you know, knock it on the head and get a proper job. And
were you getting much of that?
Not much, but a little bit at home. I know they'd be saying, right, you know, come on now, you've got to get a career and you're going to have to get a mortgage and so on. So I tried a couple of other jobs, office jobs and stuff like that. It just
wasn't for you.
Just wasn't for me. Yeah, just
the bit of the dreamer in you.
Yeah, and that dreamer went on. Maybe I just didn't mature as quick as they wanted. You know, into my mid-20s, it was 26 when I signed for Dundalk.
Right.
So, like, you've a good few years like behind you there in terms of chasing that dream. So
there's a bit of naivety in there as well. That's a constant through the book when it comes to contract negotiations, and you talk about going up to Monaghan and playing for 120, 130 quid. That the old school managers can spot the young lads like you who have that dream in their eyes, where they know actually he just wants to play football at a good level. He's thinking he's coming to Monaghan for 6 months, he's going to get a move to the big leagues, and they can take advantage of that. Yeah,
that was it. It's naivety, and it was, I suppose, that willingness, like you say. Like, it wasn't about money for me. It was about chasing that dream, and just love football, still do. And
would there been a moment, say you go to Monaghan for a couple of £100, like 3 months in, you're thinking, what the hell have I just signed up to? Because Monaghan obviously ends up in a bit of a basket case in some ways.
Yeah,
but
no, never at Monaghan. No, in fairness, never at Monaghan. I loved my time there. Mick Cook was the manager, and I suppose I was always developing, and we were developing as a team, and it was really enjoyable. But it was, I suppose, when I want to move on from there, you saw the same players going around, the same big clubs here, like same centre halves would have played for 3 or 4 of the Dublin clubs, and then they end up back at another one, you know, 5 years later, and you're just thinking, give me a crack at it, you know, I can do that job, or I can do it better, and, you know, I'll grow into a better player. But it wasn't the case. Not like now where young lads get a great chance. It was young lads, you know, you weren't thrown into,
particularly at centre half.
Yeah, and it was a physical league then as well. So you know, I suppose there was that side of it, that you had to mature more and you had to physically develop more to be able to play centre half in the league back then. But it's a different ball game now.
Yeah, like, there is a discipline in that of, you say, you're you're training part-time with Monaghan United, and it probably still it goes on with a lot of clubs in the first division now where you're called part-time, but technically you need to be a full-time footballer, that you're doing a bit of coaching on the side, you're doing a bit of personal fitness training on the side, you're doing your own
a bit
training.
of money to supplement, you know, the football, and that's what it was. And because you train 2 or 3 times a week and then play your match with Monaghan. We were training in Dundalk and the Phoenix Park, so you travel up to Monaghan for the games.
Like, it's hard to go out then at the weekend and perform to the way you want when, you know, there's 2 or 3 other things going on during the week as well. Like, your entire focus on like a full-time professional isn't on that match on a Friday night. You're trying to survive as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So if you can construct everything that it comes, that football is your priority and number one, and gets that devotion and gets that attention, then you're giving yourself a better chance. But so that's why it is very hard for lads, you know, to have to work full time and then go play as well. I went and I tried it, and I found that it was affecting my football, so that's why I knocked those jobs, even if they were handy office jobs, just knocked them on the head, because it wasn't doing me any good in terms of what I was chasing.
Yeah. The summer of 2013 then, and the call from Stephen Kenny to sign for Dundalk. Like, Dundalk in 2013 is not the club we think about now. How did that go?
It was out of the blue completely. I've been on the phone to one club and then came off and had a voicemail from Mick Cook. He was at Trot at the time, and then came off that call and I had a missed call from unknown number and listened to it with Stephen Kenny. So I was like, I'll give him a call back, obviously excited, thinking Dundalk were going all right. Had a chat with Stephen and said, listen, I want to have a think about it. Obviously I'd come from the league up north, he had to get international clearance, and I think this was a Tuesday or Wednesday, and he wanted me to be involved Friday, so you'd have to do it fairly sharp. And my naivety in terms of contracts, like I said, I'd put a rule in my head, made it up myself, and said don't sign or agree to anything straight away.
An agent?
No, well, most lads would now, but back then you wouldn't have. And in the League of Ireland, sure, it's only a few hundred quid, you know. I really, you know, I think it would benefit you, even if you don't think you're going anywhere. Someone to do that on your behalf, it just takes it out of your hand. It is something, but listen, you live and learn.
So Stephen Kenny makes the call, doesn't give you too much time to think about it.
No, he rings me. I said I need a bit of time to think about it, thinking I'd get a couple of days, and he rang me an hour or two later. Right. So we ended up on the phone for a good bit, talking, probably not saying too much, and just trying to convince me. And it wasn't that I didn't want to go there or play for him, it was that I'd been travelling, and you know, there was a voice now on the other shoulder saying, right, you need to put some other career and, you know, ahead of football now. And this was travelling again, an hour up the road every day, an hour and a half up the road every evening.
So it does come across as a bit of a sliding doors moment, where, you know, you might sign for a club in Dublin, as you say, get a proper job and play football part-time and just, you know, sort of let your career trickle out, whereas actually, you know, that call from Stephen Kenny changes your life completely. That
was exactly it. It was Shelbourne were in Dublin, they were bottom of the league and fighting relegation. You know, it was going to be a big task to stay up, and I was ready to sign for them ahead of Dundalk, just because, like you say, the sort of moment in my life where I was, and I just said, it was July, so there's 3 or 4 months left in the season, and Dundalk went and won on the Friday up in Derry, and won 1-0, and I remember thinking, they have a chance here,
right?
You know, they're building something there, and if there's that slight chance. And the biggest reason for coming back down to the league down south was, I remember the year before sitting at the FA Cup final in the Aviva, because it had been just started going in the Aviva a couple of years before, and I sat there at the game, and I remember thinking, I'd give on to playing one of these, to play this national stadium and play an occasion like this, and that was a massive thing for me. So it was that little dreamer, I suppose, still on one shoulder. And
Stephen Kenny good at selling the dream.
Yeah, so if you know Stephen, he's, in terms of his motivation, is, you know, convincing someone and you know, selling what he's going to build and what he's going to do. You know, that's a massive strength of his.
And that selling the dream from his part, is that an end goal of, I'm building a team here that's going to win a League of Ireland title, that's going to transform the way people look at the League of Ireland, or is it more personal? Is it, I'm going to make you a better person, a better player?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been sort of transformed League of Ireland and so on and that, but he's like, listen, we're going to, it would have been ambition to go and win the league, and from a team that was last in the league the year before, or stayed up via the playoffs, it was a bit sort of like, all right, yeah, you're thinking he's dreaming, but he gives you this belief in terms of, because he's such confidence in what he's saying, and it's not just sound bites coming out. Stephen's one of a kind in terms of, he's himself, doesn't try to be anyone else. And yeah, just in the end, I was like, I have to go, and if there's a chance of medals and a chance of being part of something like that, I had to go. So I said, listen, what's another 4 months of prolonging I suppose the other career that my family were sort of on to me about.
I'm sure one of the reasons people will want to read the book as well is about Stephen Kenny, and to get that real insight that you have into what made him eventually the Republic of Ireland manager. Can you talk a bit more about that bit that people don't quite understand, that man management? Because we've spoken to lots of Dundalk players and say, what is it that made him so good? And it's always a bit, it's kind of hard to explain. Have you figured out what it is that means, particularly all those Dundalk players just speak so highly of him, and probably can't understand the questioning that's been there over the last couple of years since he got the Ireland job?
Yeah, it's like years ago we used to say, I watched the programme The X Factor, and they're like, they've got that X Factor. They never explained what it is, but when someone just has something, like I said there about Stephen, he's his own man. He doesn't try to be somebody else. I find a lot of people these days, when they're coming into management or coaching and stuff like that, they're reading leadership books, or they're picking up stuff and trying to put, I suppose, what they're learning directly on in someone else's sort of personality, instead of just finding their own way and what works for them. And I don't know if that makes sense, but Stephen is himself, and that then everything that comes then is authentic. It's him. Nothing comes across as sort of false.
So you always believe them?
Yeah, he does. And I talk about how in team talks, I'll be honest, a couple of the team talks, and I remember a couple of them starting off going, and you'd nearly have the giggles with one of the lads. You'd be trying to make him laugh on the other side of the dressing room. You always have stuff like that where you have lads behind the manager, and then if they end up there, they're trying to make the lads in front of the manager laugh and whatever. But Stephen, a couple of team talks, you start off and I'm like, where's he going with this? The tangent. And then by the end of it, I'd turn around and I'd be like, how do I end up like that? Like, how do I end up for a game like this? When the team talk started, off the note that it did, he just had a knack. Like I said before, I don't know if he ever studied psychology, but he seems to have a great grip of it that way. So in terms of being able to get people up for a game and I suppose get them out of whatever mood they're in, whatever thing they come in, whatever you have at home that's in your head, to change that train of thought and have you solely focused on this and up for exactly what's in front of you, is a really, really big character trait to have, in football, obviously. And then, like I say, is being so authentic and natural, getting people to buy into what he's doing. If he believes it firmly and he, speaks with such confidence about it, then you sell something better as such. I find that's a massive trait from it. Then he gives you belief. Like we talk about, he loves attacking football and wingers. He loves his wingers, like your Darryl Horgan and your Michael Duffy, and it would be, I always remember him saying, like, you're electric, and how people are paying in to see you, and they were, because these players were lighting up the league, and he just filled them with confidence before going out, and they'd literally be destroying fullback after fullback, and the lads would be on top form, loving their football. And
you're obviously not in the Ireland dressing room, but when you look at Stephen Kenny as Ireland manager, do you recognise the Stephen Kenny as Ireland manager? Is it the same man that was the Dundalk manager?
Yeah, I can see it coming out in the team. It's obviously a lot harder to do in international. You're playing against top teams, management teams, tactically, and top international players. So, and the other side of it is he only has players for a couple of weeks at a go, and you don't have much time on a training pitch in between, because a lot of lads are coming off a game, so you can't do much on the pitch for the next 2 days, and then sure they're going into our game. So there's not a lot of time to go through. So stuff in terms of team development, as opposed to if you have a league team. But I can see in terms of development, like we were told, we don't have players and we don't have anyone that can play football, and you can see that coming out in the team. You can see the ability to play. You can see the confidence in players now looking to get on the ball, looking to play, pass forward. It's just that consistency is obviously what the next stage they have to kick on to, and that takes time. But yeah, I can see that coming out in the team, and it would remind me, I could see why when I know Stephen.
How you progressed during your time in Dundalk, like when people looked at you during the last couple of successful years, a real totemic figure at the heart of the defence, a sort of traditional Irish centre half moment, but a real leader as well. Would you have been that guy growing up? Would you have been like somebody very ambitious when you go into a dressing room, even when you were going in at Bray playing under 21s, when you went up to Portadown, someone who would have driven standards, or were you someone who needed to be led?
Yeah, I think I would have been that type, in terms of that was probably a strength of my character. Whereas again, I'd know my weaknesses, at the same time. But that would have been a strength in terms of organisation and talking and stuff like that. Would have always been. It was built into me from a young age, from a young coach, from a coach when I was young, in terms of organising the back and everything in front of us and talking the whole time. So yeah, that would be seen as that. And again, there'd be plenty of players more talented and technically was, and but it was, I suppose, I'd always have a work ethic. Like I said, I'd always be constantly in the gym and trying to get fitter and everything like that. And I think actions speak louder, in that regard, sort of thing. And
yeah.
So I'd like to think, from a young age, I would have been that, and like I ended up as captain of Bray at that age, sort of thing. So that's why I think other people would have seen it in me as well. But yeah.
It's a little bit insane what you ended up achieving in Dundalk, and the way Stephen Kenny managed to just bring this group together of, players who were at different stages of their career, a lot of them struggling at the time, wondering, probably like yourself, which way their career was going to go, and for Dundalk to win 5 league titles, to have the European runs, to play the quality of football that Dundalk played, and you were such an instrumental figure in it. What are the real standout moments for you, standout games that, if we're talking in 30 years' time, you'll still think back on?
There's a few good and bad reasons.
Yeah. Go good first.
Listen, the league in 2014, last home game, we'd thrown it away, in terms of we'd led the league for months beforehand, and then 2 draws I think it was going into that game, put Cork ahead of us. So we had Cork at home in the last game in front of our own fans, and we had to win. A draw wouldn't do, and it was crazy because we were in great form that week, even though you'd think people had blown it and the mentality might be questioning yourself, but we were like, sure, we don't go to draw games anyway. It'd be no different if a draw would do us. We only know how to go and win a game. So we were fully confident going into it, and then to have a game like that, a cup final, but to win your league in front of your own fans, and for the first one, that feeling is crazy. Like it lives with you. And a couple of months before, we had the League Cup final, and we ended up at home to Shamrock Rovers. I think we won 3-2, and that was, League Cup wouldn't be obviously high on people's priority, but that was our first trophy, and it was big because it was the first taste of success, and it was learning to win and learning to get over that line, because we'd lost this Atlantic Cup final earlier on that year. So the first ones, in that couple of months were massive. Then when you go into European games, that's a different animal altogether, because you're playing in stadiums that are phenomenal, and you're playing against massive players in terms of some you wouldn't know, but they're technical, and the intensity of them is ridiculous. You're learning every game, and then the likes of like Rosenborg away, for me that'd be big, scoring Champions League qualifier. I think you had Bentner up front with Jensen off, he's a Danish captain, and playing off him, you've calibre that type of players.
You were probably at a good age to experience all that as well, because when you talk about learning from all of them, if you're 20, 21, you're not really learning. You're probably just getting on with the game, going and enjoying the moment, and think this is going to last forever. Actually, to play against that quality of player, and probably on the flight home think about actually.
Yeah, you do, and as you get older, you think deeper into it, and which is good. Obviously, though, if you experience it earlier, you're going to learn a bit more, and maybe, I suppose, go to bigger heights on the game. But like you said, we came from, I couldn't have imagined that's where I was going to go, to those games and those occasions when I was signing for Dundalk, because like you said, a lot of us were not misfits, but like I've been playing first division for 3 years and then up north, and no one would keep an eye on you, know how you're doing or anything. Like, so me signing there is probably like, he's just cover, or what are they signing him for? And I can imagine that was said by plenty, because that's the nature of football. I hadn't, pulled up any trees. But there was a lot of players like that at Dundalk, and a lot of lads, I suppose, that were good attitudes, good work rates, and I suppose points to prove, and willingness to improve and be part of a team. Not all me sort of thing. And that was a massive thing, because even though we had players that were such superstars and such ability, it was always about the team.
Who kept them in line?
Stephen. That's what it comes from. And I suppose it was a thing I thought about earlier when you asked about him. Is a massive thing is there has to be a bit of fear, I think, from repercussions if you step out of line. Right. You don't need big authoritarian sort of treating you like school kids, but you need to have repercussions if someone's not doing their job, or if they're they're not keeping up standards, that there is repercussions, or you'd be held accountable. And I think that's a massive part for it, is that Stephen's on top of all that stuff, but not treating you like a little kid, Well,
he had to stay on top of you, because throughout the book, any chance he had to go out in the lash, you were taking it.
Listen, we had plenty of nights out, and plenty of during the year, but it was always at the right time. There wasn't stuff like you'd have a week between games if you were out on a Saturday night, and it wouldn't be a whole weekend rollover and stuff like that. But if it did get on top and got too much, it would be pulled up on.
You were a proper goal scoring defender. Still are a proper goal scoring defender. It's not done yet. You're obviously still playing.
It's been a while since I scored. But
what was it? 2 league winning goals. Obviously, you mentioned the goal against Rosenborg. So many big goals throughout your career. And you talk about sort of thinking about it the night before, trying to have that vision of you scoring the winning goal. I was thinking of someone like Shane Duffy, who often you talk to after Ireland match, and he'd be devastated that he hadn't scored. As a centre half, where because he knows he's such a big presence. Got that sense with you as well, that you felt actually that you should be scoring 7, 8, 9 goals a season.
Yeah, and that was it. And Stephen then would sort of put that on you as well. When you did start scoring, the target would always just keep going, and it'd give you belief to get it as well. Like we do finishing. I was always doing the finishing after training with the rest of the players, usually attacking players. I loved doing it. But Stephen be celebrating goals. The buzz on the training ground was brilliant that way. In terms of like if it came off on the training ground and a good move and a finish and that sort of thing, Stephen he'd be buzzing. He'd be celebrating a goal like he scored, that sort of thing. And listen, there's no better feeling than scoring a goal. Even like I'm a centre half, and I probably shouldn't be saying that.
Pride yourself in clean sheets.
You do, and you love it. But scoring a goal is just, like it goes back to the little lad's dream. When you're a kid and you score a goal, and you're thinking it's on match of the day, or it's playing for Liverpool. But I had a fortunate to have a good few years of a good few goals, but credit must go, and I always have to say it, to delivery, because we had set piece takers that were, I knew if we set screens and we had little movements and stuff, the ball would be there, and the timing of the ball and the timing of, so it's not just, I'd love to say it was just, I was great at scoring goals, but there might have been 2 other lads with me doing movements and doing setting screens or little rolls, and then there'd be another lad somewhere else and he'd be doing a run to take somebody else out of the area, and then the kicker would be going off a specific time of that person doing the other run, and they have to hit a specific area, and it all has to be timed and coordinated, and so there was a lot involved in it.
A lot of repetition.
Yeah, a lot of repetition and a lot of concentration.
The relationship with Stephen Kenny, it did end up being somewhat fractured towards the end of his time at Dundalk, and what probably should have been maybe the best season of your career, there were a couple of really difficult moments. There's a Cruyff turn against St. Petersburg that probably wasn't the most advisable at the time. That
not in the snow, no.
Not in the snow, though. I'm not sure Stephen Kenny will ever fully forgive you for. And I was watching it back, and in fairness, he probably has a point. What were you thinking with that? Again, is that the... no, you're not thinking about clean sheets, you're thinking about actually the superstardom. Or was it just a bad moment at a bad time against
it's just
top quality opposition?
Yeah, that's it. You get punished at those levels, like I say, the intensity.
You're doing Cruyff turns all the time in the League of Ireland.
Yes, I think we had a free in our own half. So, like, we're not ones to just sort of route one and send it long. They maybe should have. It's not long before half time, but I was thinking bang it into Shieldsy, bang it out the other centre half. We keep it and, play as we do. But in hindsight, when you look back, and it's easy when you look back in the video and you see where everyone's positioned, the full-backs were gone up higher and so on, so the option wouldn't have been on and that. And then I was sort of caught on the hop when the ball was fizzed back to me. I sort of look, usually I'd look maybe at the full-back, but if he's up higher, it's not on. So you should probably just boot the ball. But again, that wasn't, I suppose, where the head was, and just thought I'd check back, and wasn't the best decision. So. And like I said, when you're playing in stadiums and things like that, like, there's a moment when that happens, and I know it's nearly like in a movie, and you sort of slip, and it's like a wave, because the noise, all the Zenit fans, literally, I don't know if there's 70,000 or what, and it's a real old school stadium with these massive floodlights, like Friday Night Lights type thing coming down, and I just remember this sort of wave of noise coming, and those boys, Giuliano pounced on the ball, I think it was, and they just, intensity coming forward, and you're just thinking, shit. Sorry, I probably shouldn't be doing that, but that was the sort of moment, in thing. And that's, listen, a lot of great moments in playing football, and that's how we played. So you've got to take the bad with the good. A lot of good moments, but
it's obviously one of the biggest games you will have ever played. It's a Europa League group stage game at St. Petersburg, a giant of the game. Stephen Kenny's reaction was like he went all in on blaming you for that moment, which I was quite surprised by, because it seems somewhat out of character of everything that had gone before. And I'm sure you'd made other mistakes throughout your time.
Yeah, listen, centre half, you're always going to be.
Why it was quite shocking, and you seem to take it particularly personally.
Yeah, it's probably because I was hurting myself so bad. You know what I mean? I hold myself and expectations and standards up, and like I say, it was such a big game, so I'm hammering myself as it is. And you don't want any more on top of it, sort of thing. But that's the job. Like I said, you make mistakes. All centre halves have, and lead to goals and stuff like that. And I probably did get, I suppose, stuff highlighted before when I made mistakes for the goals, but I took no notice of it, because it wouldn't have been, that important as that night, sort of thing. So, at the time, yeah, just like I said, we were in a different stratosphere in terms of attention, in terms of going from playing League of Ireland to playing at that, and we were competing in the group. So and I'm my own worst critic, so I sort of made things worse on top of myself, and
right.
I took things the way I took it wouldn't have helped, sort of thing. So
a few weeks later, then there's the cup final, and Sean Maguire scores the winning goal, takes a deflection off you. Like, does it change how you look back on that period? The fact that, I think in the midst of all that, you are having difficulties then with Stephen Kenny, where I think you're maybe reading more into it than he is. The fact that he had singled you out after that mistake against St. Petersburg, does it change how you reflect on that period?
Yeah, I suppose, like saying earlier, I talk about my strengths, I know my weaknesses as well. You have to be honest with yourself as a player, and especially when you're older, it's easier to do that. So when you come away from the cup final and Shawnee peeled off, the throw-in was on the other side and he peeled off someone, he goes to take a shot and I just went to block it. It takes a nick off my heel and just, I suppose, spins slow motion in the other way, and Gary was wrong-footed, obviously, because he dived the direction of the shot. And I know there and then with that's just unlucky. There's not much I can do there, It's just unlucky, and you have to. So I couldn't hammer myself for that, because otherwise, you'd be way down there, and you've still got a few games to play in the season and in the groups. So yeah, that's, I suppose, on that side I wasn't too hard on myself, but I was there going, oh, what have I done to deserve this? Because we played well, I'd had a good game.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and it was a big thing in my head, because it's 3 days later after the Senate game, thinking, right, have a good game, your next game, then right to Everton. It forgets about everything else, and I'm thinking, lovely, I've had a great game here. And we were, I suppose, I thought the better team in terms of looking more likely to win it. And then that happens, and listen, in football and the perception outside, people take everything else away and just see, oh, it goes in off me. So you're going to get the flack and stuff for that, but there's not much you can do, and you sort of have to convince yourself and stick with that and just blur out everything else. But,
is Seanie Maguire the best striker you've played against in the League of Ireland?
Yeah, he'd be up there. Seanie never gave you a minute. He was excellent, and I suppose Cork win the league that year. His form for that first half of the season was phenomenal. I think he had 22 goals or something, maybe. I'm not sure, but he was. He never gave you a second. His work rate was amazing. You knew he was always there. If there was any mistake, he'd pounce on it. He kept you on your toes. He didn't have time on the ball, everything like that. So yeah, he'd be up there as one of the best played against the league.
We're sitting here with Dundalk 5 points behind Shamrock Rovers with a game in hand, so it looks as though we have a bit of a title race, and I think there's a feeling that maybe Dundalk are slightly ahead of where everyone expected them to be under Stevie O'Donnell. In the couple of years since the league was won under Vinnie Perth, the view on the outside is the club turned into an absolute basket case. Filippo Giovagnoli comes in, some of your best players are leaving to sign for your biggest rivals in Shamrock Rovers. Nobody quite sure who the manager is, who the head coach is, what Jim Magilton's role is, how much influence the American owner wants. Does Bill Hulsizer want Gary Rogers taking corner kicks and crazy stuff like this? Been in the midst of all that as the senior player and as somebody who knows what it takes to get to the very top of the League of Ireland. What was that period like for you personally?
Frustrating is the main thing that comes to when you go through it there, it's all in the space of a couple of years. Everything you've just mentioned there, it was so frustrating, because my thing in my head is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And everyone there was these wild ideas, and like you said,
is there a moment where you went from thinking, wow, this investment is going to bring us to a whole other level again, where we'll be, without question, the dominant force in the League of Ireland, but Europa League football is going to come year after year. Maybe we can start thinking about qualifying for a Champions League group stage, where you go from that sort of mindset to, this has become a basket case.
Yeah, and I think that's where someone lost the run of it, in terms of, you've still got to win the league. So you've got to have people there that know how to win the league, know how to win the League of Ireland. So when you're bringing in, they're saying, we want to sign European players. That's grand, but you need to be in Europe, and you need to be in the Champions League to have a good run at Europe. So you need to be proven. You need tried and tested lads that know what it takes to win. And unfortunately, every footballer goes, through spells, whether they be hot, cold, or a little bit off it. But all of us, I suppose, were being questioned, that were there and proven winners that win the league. And like you said, the lads that go to Shamrock Rovers, they'd shown it year after year.
You nearly went to Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, that was a few years before that. Now that wasn't in the midst of that, but
you turn them down because you love Dundalk too much.
Well, that was it. I was feet under the table, the house there, a family there, and when the club gets you up there, until I went there, I never thought much. They had a great crowd. I remember playing on Thursday nights for Monaghan against them. I thought, it's great atmosphere up there. It's a bit mad, but there's this feeling, and it's hard to describe, but it's a massive, massive club, and the town, the club is the town. Everybody's behind it.
You married into the town?
Yeah, I married a girl from the centre of town. They're a GAA family, so
okay,
the father wasn't too happy when he found out I wasn't a Brogan or one of those from Dublin.
He heard footballer from Dublin.
Yeah, that was it. So, but yeah, it's a massive club, and I suppose it's only when you're there and involved that you realise, it gets a grip on you how big the club is and how good it is up there. And how good it is, I suppose, to be full-time footballer in a club like that.
It's incredible how quickly it can fall apart, and listen to such a history in the League of Ireland of that happening. Like I mentioned, the Gary Rogers maybe taking corner kicks there, something like that. In terms of potential mad decisions, was there talk that Bill Holzhauser wanted you to run the club?
It's in the book, and I don't know whether he was joking or not, and I laughed at it, and he said it again. It was in a conversation with him.
So was this to become manager, or was this to become general manager of the entire place?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. In terms of commercially running it or something like that, like GM, like you said, but I don't know if it was a joke or not, sort of thing. And I laughed it off, and he had said it again, and I think I gave a bit of a smart answer back then, because it was a frosty enough phone call we had.
Right.
And I just said, listen, I'll be straight up and honest with him.
How did that go down?
Grant, he said, listen, if there's ever anything, if you can help, I'd like to hear it, and that sort of thing. But I don't know if it was just, blasé me and stuff like that. But I felt as a player, at times you had to have these calls and you had to have these talks and say, listen, what's going on here? But you were just fed whatever lines, and listen, they didn't really care what you thought, or they had their ideas, and that's what they were going with.
So where are you now then? 35, you're still part of the Dundalk squad, trying to get yourself back in?
Yeah, I've had a couple of setbacks since I got back with the knee, between COVID, and then I just had a little issue with the foot that I'm hopefully back from soon now. So it's frustrating, yeah.
You've had a very difficult couple of years. You outlined towards the end of the book you had a real bad health scare.
Yeah, from the surgery I had blood clots. That was nearly fatal. So it wasn't in the book originally. Right. And then obviously the book was postponed, I suppose, from last November to early this year.
Happen?
This happened, what was it, May. So I had surgery on the 1st of May last year, and then I ended up for about 3 weeks in hospital, bedbound, because the clots were fairly serious in my lung, and building up the pressure into the heart. So it was a fair scare when you weren't too far off going the other way, because listen, you think you're indestructible as a footballer, and you have to have a bit of a confidence and ego about you, and think you can battle through anything. But something like that then pulls it back and into perspective, that the knee was the last of my worries, and I suppose just getting out of hospital was the main thing.
But I think a lot of people who read the book will be quite shocked to read that. Were your teammates in Dundalk aware of what was happening and just how serious it was?
No, a couple of the medical team knew it, and maybe a few people in terms of management, but didn't really. There was enough of a circus going on in terms of having something else. And then listen, it's a small league and a small country here. I didn't want to go out, and I wasn't able to talk about it. I didn't want people knowing, and I didn't want to be having the conversation over and over, and that's why it wasn't in the book originally, because in terms of my head I wasn't able for it. And
was that you wanted to still have that perception out there that you were bulletproof?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then coming to terms with it yourself, then that you're not, and you did go through something like that. It was a mad, between the injury and then that, and then I had a little scare with me young lad. Yeah. In the space of from May to September. Right. It was just every time I'd sort of get back on track, there was something then a few weeks later that happened that was sort of life changing. So it was mentally it was tough. But listen, everyone has them in their lives and stuff like that. You just have to plough on and get yourself together and sort of hit the reset button and get on with it. But that was my way of dealing with it. It was just, I'd prefer people not to have to go through it over and over, and then when you're ready then and you've dealt with it, then listen, it's grand.
And you're at an age where naturally people will start asking about retirement.
Time isn't on my side, you can say it.
Like when you go through something as extreme as that, were you thinking, once you knew that thankfully you were going to survive, were you thinking that's me done with football?
No, I suppose the stubbornness in me.
And your wife thinking that's you done with football?
Yeah, I think so, and the mother as well. I was told, I suppose when you have clots, there's provoked and unprovoked, and there was it was a bit ambiguous, and there was they were a bit unclear as to where they lay on it. They thought it was unprovoked, which means you'd have to be on thinners for life.
Right.
Which means you can't play, because if you got a bang to the head, internal bleeding and different stuff and that. So I ended up being on thinners for the rest of the year, which is quite long for a provoked. But I had a meeting with a consultant, and I convinced her that the way the reporters wrote and so on, and that it was provoked and not unprovoked, what they said. And she looked into it, and she sort of agreed. Things got lost because I ended up going to the hospital a few times. It was a long story. Things sort of got muddled in terms of the notes and stuff like that. So thankfully, we went off them there on New Year's Eve, and it was sort of like, it was an anxious few weeks, because you don't know until you go off them, especially when that was up in the air. And the only way, she said, is just be wary for symptoms, sort of thing. So I was going into pre-season there, and I was just sort of praying that you know, everything stayed all right, and then I was back playing football, and thankfully, touch wood, everything's been all good so far. So
I'm sure it gave you plenty of time when you're lying on a hospital bed to think then about the future, what's next, and what you want to do with the rest of your life. What is next?
I don't know. I've got a few businesses. I started a business then a couple of months later. I don't know why I did it myself. It's a food company called Nude Foods, and I have a sports recovery unit in Junction 6 there in Castleknock. So I've got a couple of things on the go already, but kids have come. I have 2 kids under the age of 3, so that then changes perspective for me, even since I've set up the businesses. So it changes the whole time. But in terms of football, I just taking it as I go, and want to make the most of whatever's left in this career, and be part of, you know, there's something happening in Dundalk now. There's something building, and it's a great place to be, and you know, I want to be able to contribute more to it. Obviously I'm in the background, I've only played a couple of games, but I want to be able to contribute on the pitch and help push us on to where we want to go. And
has the talk changed around Dundalk over the last week then about what could possibly be achieved this season? Because it does feel, with the way the fixtures are set up, Shamrock Rovers are starting in Europe, they could have a huge amount of European games. They'll certainly hope so this season, and Dundalk might have a clear run at it.
That's the narrative, I suppose, being thrown about now after last Friday, but we just look after ourselves, and that's what we've done in all those years we were successful. You look after yourself, and you look after the next game. If you're there at the end of the season, and if you've done your business, you'll be rewarded, you know, if it's good enough. But I think there's clubs that are way better placed to finish ahead of us.
You're the underdogs, yeah?
Yeah, well, everyone knows that story.
You seen any signs of Stephen Kenny and Stevie O'Donnell?
I don't know if I'll answer that one.
You're still trying to get picked.
Yeah. Listen, he's come in as gaffer, and he's been brilliant. You can see the team improving the whole time as the season's going. And again, he's his own man. He puts his own. It's his team, his way of playing, his own stamp on it, and it's only the start, I'd say, for him. So yeah, it's been good. It's different, which again can be good as well, because we talked about Filippo coming in and stuff like that, and I know he got a lot of stick in that, but I learned a lot during that period. I played, you know, right of a back three, and different culture, different coaching styles, everything. He was a lovely man as well. Like, he was a great fella, but off every manager and coach you learn, especially as you get older, sort of thing. I love it, because it's something different, and it keeps it fresh. It keeps a new challenge coming in. So it's the same with Stephen. He's pushing everyone, and he's pushing the team, I suppose, setting expectations, and it's a roundabout way of answering your question and saying hopefully we'll be there at the end.
Yeah, hopefully. Brian, thanks so much for coming in. The book One Last Shot is available now. It's well worth the read, to say. It's a really good, honest insight into Brian's own life, but I think also Irish football over the last decade and a half. Very best of luck with it, Brian.
Thanks, William.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner of our women's national football team. Don't miss Georgia versus Ireland on Monday evening.